Alright, so I think this week I'm going to do two videos based on Scarlet and Violet base. Especially with the recent spike in illustration rares, I think it's a good idea to kind of talk about your options when it comes to purchasing cards from the set, especially for those of you that did not experience this wonderful set. I am a firm SV1 and OBF defender. I was a huge fan of both Obsidian Flames and Scarlet and Violet base, and I will always promote these sets or defend these sets. And I think today's video is going to focus on the 5 cards I love the artworks for the most. And they would be cards that, if I was a new collector, these would be the ones I would be chasing personally. Obviously, you see that we have the most intense card from the set, the most spiked up card in recent memory of the set. Drowsy is number 1. That's because it's our boy Tomokazu Kamiya doing the artwork. This is probably the best artwork in the set. Drowsy did have a massive spike, but if you look over time, Drowsy's attention slowly started climbing. You see that in December, 13 sales, 21 sales at 15. But then when the hype started happening, people started going back and getting Drowsy, and you're seeing like 30 plus sales on most days. And sure, you could say, hey, maybe this was a day when it was manipulated because it was 49 in that time frame of 74 sales, and then it spiked up with 111 sales with the market price of $81. And yeah, sure, that could be manipulation, but even then, going back to $68 and 60 sales, we're seeing that Drowsy is having a lot of movement either way. Like, it's had an increase in movement in the past month. That would probably really influence the market price. But this 81 with 111 sales, and considering that just a few days later it retracted back down to 68, yeah, there was probably an attempt to manipulate it. But I feel like the $50, $60 price tag is probably where it's going to be at. You see here, market price is a 62. Always ignore the promoted listing on TCG Player. Always scroll down to see what's available. And you see here, you got some $55, $60 copies that you can easily snag up. So for me personally, it's not as bad of a deal as when it was spiked up to like $80. And when you see a price like this is always going to be like a direct by TCG Player listing. They're trying to promote direct. They want to get that extra money. Always scroll down to your listings and grab these. I also say always avoid these listings too, because they're usually above what the market is. So if you're buying Japanese cards, always make sure that you pull up the Japanese listing, because as you see here, you got copies for a little bit cheaper than that over here. But for the most part, you can find copies for about $60, and I don't know if Drowsy will retract. Here's the thing that makes me curious about what will happen with Drowsy. There was something that Scarlet and Violet base had the potential to do, and that was one card take off like Magikarp. And I think Drowsy is the potential Magikarp of the set. Because if you look at Magikarp shot up to $100+ even before the hype. It was an expensive card because of how many people wanted it. And I think Scarlet and Violet base, I think Drowsy's got that potential. Did I think Drowsy would be the card that would do that? It was hard to say, but considering the artwork dynamic, I think Drowsy makes the perfect sense on the card that will take off like Magikarp. So if you have the extra money to spend, this might be a card worth picking up, especially considering that the potential for it to go even higher is there. You know what I mean? Like, the potential for it to continue climbing is there. Look at Magikarp, right? Still tons of listings on the market, but it's just gone up over time. And I think this card has that potential. When it comes to the other artwork I recommend, Akira Agawa's Dondozo is a very, very underappreciated card. Once again, always ignore the listing that's here, because you see here the market price for this card is about $12, but you can get copies easily for about $12. If you go and look for near mint copies, about $12.88 plus shipping. $15 for the next listing. So it is slowly trekking up. As you can see here, it's trekking up. There seem to be no real buyout attempts. There's not a lot of movement on this card. Sure, we see some spikes here, but guys, that's 10 cards sold in a day. So there's not a lot of demand for this card yet, but I think this is one of those cards that people might look back on and be like, wow, Akira Agawa really cooked with this artwork. And I think this is a card that could get some more desirability over time. That's a strong guess based on my personal preference for this artwork. This is my second favorite art in the set. But even then, I still think it's a beautiful card, and I think it is one that is sort of underappreciated and might be worth picking up if you haven't already. And obviously, if you want a cheaper variant, you can always go with the Japanese version and spend $4, $5 for a copy. This is a card that I did not expect to spike up. When it comes to top artists in the hobby, I don't hear a lot of So-So. I don't hear a lot of this artist. You hear a lot of Kamiya, you hear a lot of Kanda, you hear a lot of Agawa, you hear a lot of so many other artists, but this artist right here, you don't see as many people promote their stuff. And I've always thought that they were one of the more underappreciated artists, top 3 artists for me personally. This is why this card's featured on this list. But this card actually seen a spike. Now, I am going to say this spike was strictly due to manipulation. And as you can see, it has started to retract over time. The manipulation, from what I'm aware of, was potentially caused by a creator buying out multiple copies and everybody kind of FOMO'd thinking it was getting bought out. It wasn't that people were planning a buyout and buying it out to raise the price. It was just that somebody wanted a bunch of copies when this card was $6, $7. And everybody else just kind of FOMO'd and jumped along, and then it shot up. And it spiked up to $25 after the buyout. And then now it's retracted back and it's sub 20. And for the most part, it's not a bad deal to pick up a copy of this card, in my personal opinion. Sure, it may still continue retracting, but at the same time, it is a beautiful artwork, right? And if you're collecting for the artwork, this is a sub $20 card now. That is just worth adding to your collection. Will this have the same takeoff effect as Drowsy that we seen earlier? Probably not. But I do think it's a card worth picking up. I love this Graveyard card. It is my 3rd favorite artwork in the set. The only SIR that I have in the top 5 artworks of the set is actually Penny. When it comes to SIRs in the set, I actually think Penny is probably the most interesting and the most unique artwork. Sure, a lot of people might say, hey, Miriam should go in this spot, and I can understand that sentiment. Maybe some people feel Gardevoir should go in that spot, and I can understand that sentiment. And maybe we got some Koraidon and Miraidon fans who would argue that those cards belong in that spot. But me personally, I just love this Penny artwork. I think it is the best artwork for an SIR in the set. It is done by Okacheki. For those of you that are not familiar with Okacheki's work, please check out their portfolio. They do have some amazing artworks. But the thing about the Penny art is you can get many of these copies for like $6, $7 a copy. And it's a very underappreciated card. It does have consistent movements for an SIR. You're getting 20 plus sales a day. There has been a recent spike from $6 to $7. But for the most part, it's holding consistent. It's not a card that if you were to buy it today at $7, you're going to lose a lot of money on. So personally, this is, if I had to recommend a card to pick up that was a safe investment, Penny is it. Because while all the IRs that I'm talking about today have seen a recent uptick, Penny is just holding consistent. Penny's just holding consistent at the $6, $7. And I think over time, Penny might slowly trek up. It's not going to go super massively boom, but it'll slowly check up over time. The last card that I'm going to recommend for artwork, my 5th favorite artwork in the set, it is the King Gambit illustration rare done by Shin Nagasawa. I actually think this is the most underappreciated illustration rare in the set. Sure, it has seen an uptick, but look at the sales. There's no spikes. It's just consistent sales for this card. Market price is only $8 though, and you can easily find copies for $8, $9 for this card. It is a really, really good artwork by Shin Nagasawa, and it is one of the most underappreciated cards. This card, in my opinion, should be a $10 plus card. And considering that it has consistent sales that is bringing it slowly up, I can easily see this card over time being a $10 plus card because of how stunning it is. This is personally my personal recommendation on another card that is a great buy for the price because you're not spending a lot of money. And the chances of it going back down to $2 is very, very low because it's held consistent and it's had consistent natural growth over time. The first 3 cards I showed you, especially Drowsy and Graveyard, have a more inconsistent natural growth. But King Gambit, on the other hand, that is 100% a natural growth thing. So personally, I recommend picking up King Gambit and Penny because I think their artworks are stunning, and I think they're safe buys for the price they are at. As for the rest of the cards, this is kind of a riskier purchase. They're just, artworks are so good that I could not recommend them. But at the same time, they are riskier buys because they have recently spiked up and they could retract over time. Anyways, that is it for my 5 recommendations from this set, Scarlet and Violet based on the artworks of the sets. Let me know down in the comment section below if there was any cards you would personally recommend that I left off my list. Obviously, I'm basing these off personal preferences for what I like from the artwork, and obviously everybody's going to have their own personal preferences based on artwork. Art's subjective, right? So I would love to know your thoughts and opinions on what cards I missed down in the comment section below. And if you like more great trading card content, make sure you subscribe to the Card Game Nomad so you don't miss a video. And as always, remember to keep it classy and stay awesome.